Good afternoon. Welcome to the Monday, May 7th meeting of the Green Bay Planning Commission. First item, roll call. Timothy Gilbert, Chair, is present. Sid Bremer, Vice Chair.
Present.
Alderman Veronica Purpose-Dax.
Present.
Lisa Hanson.
Present.
Jacob Miller is excused. Randall Petrowski.
Present.
Jerry Wisbicki.
Present.
Thank you. Next item, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none? Do we need to vote on this?
For approval of the agenda?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So how do we vote?
Yeah.
We'll prompt you.
Okay.
New technology, bear with us.
Did I prompt you guys to vote now? Jerry has it.
What should we be seeing?
Jerry has it. It's a pop-up little white box. I don't get it.
I got it.
Maybe it's just not the same.
Pop-up white box.
Are you ready?
No, I haven't received it.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah, we can do this vote for you guys too. So we'll just do for the action items, we'll prompt you guys to vote for the other things we can do
Oh.
for you then.
Okay.
Make us go a little faster.
So you just want to do a voice vote? or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next item, approval of the minutes from last meeting.
I have a concern about the minutes. I'm wondering, will the minutes continue to include timestamps and references to the video?
Sure. So
How it gets the video?
they will not have the timestamps in the minutes, but the new system, when you go to the website to like watch the video, it actually will be aligned so you can look at the agenda and correct me if I'm wrong, you can click on the item and it will take you to that spot in the video.
Okay.
So
Even though
it will be timestamped automatically, it won't have the number in here, but it will be aligned with when you open the item as we're doing the meeting. So it will bookmark, like right now, we're talking about minutes, so you go back and look at the minutes and you'll be seeing us, so talk to ourselves at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
With that in mind, I will move approval of the minutes.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item, public hearing.
Oh, do we need to vote then again
Uh,
on the approval of the minutes?
We just did.
We did that.
The minutes, we could do a voice vote, come up with those in, but for the business items, we'll be taking a roll call vote.
Okay.
Okay, we have a public hearing on the request to amend the City of Green Bay Smart Growth 2022 Comprehensive Plan from commercial and general industrial to medium and high density housing for property located at 1060 Gray Court, submitted by Jonathan Leroy, Maw and Associates on behalf of Jerry Bigelow, Bigelow Rentals. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Green Bay Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information in this matter, and your concerns or comments. We also ask that you confine your testimony to the facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes. We will now open the public hearing on the Smart Growth Comprehensive Plan amendment. Okay, is there anybody? First we have to open, right?
It's a public hearing, so there's no motion
Okay.
to open. This is a public hearing, so, yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody wishing to speak on this matter? Yes, could you?
I'll decline right now. I'll decline it.
Okay. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this public hearing? Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Hearing none? Let the record reflect that no one came forward. This public hearing is now closed. Next item, regular business. Item 1, consideration with possible action on the request to amend the City of Green Bay Smart Growth 2022 Comprehensive Plan from commercial and general industrial to medium and high-density holding for property located at 1060 Great Court, submitted by Jonathan Leroy, Morrow and Associates on behalf of Jerry Bigelow, Bigelow Rentals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is what you just had a public hearing for. It's a comp plan amendment request to the 2022 Smart Growth Comprehensive Plan for the City of Green Bay, changing the designation of property from the commercial and general industrial land use category to the medium and high density housing land use category for property at 1080 Gray Court. Kind of show you on the, I don't have a pointer, but on the screen here, the petitioner's property is outlined in red. It's about 8.9 acres. You see a little blue dashed outline in the center. That's the area of the request for the comp plan amendment. The site itself is located on Velp Avenue, or off of Velp Avenue, in between Buchanan on the west, Atkinson Drive on the east. You can see the roundabout there at the corner. Velp Avenue is on the south, and to the north you have the railroad tracks, and then the highway, the I-43 interchange, so the off-ramp and the on-ramp. The site itself is actually accessed off of Gray Court, which is this small cul-de-sac here. Go down to the next one. This is the zoning for the lot itself. So you can see the zoning for the entire area surrounding the lot, and the lot itself is general industrial zoning. Across the street, across Velp Avenue, you have predominantly a single-family neighborhood there. There is some mixed zoning, so you had some very density residential that supports some apartment complexes. There's some office residential, and also some commercial zoning, some neighborhood commercial as well as general commercial. This is a map of our comprehensive future land use plan that's located within the Smart Growth Plan. So you can see, again, the entire lot is outlined in black. The amending area, or the requested amendment, is in blue. The western portion is designated in the comp plan as general industrial, for general industrial land use. The eastern portion is for general commercial land use. You can see that along Velp Avenue corridor in the comprehensive plan, it's recommending commercial land uses, and as you go north and west, it's more of an industrial situation next to the railroad tracks. Additionally, in June of 2017, the Velp Avenue area-wide plan was adopted. That is a supplement to the comprehensive plan, so it is part and parcel with it. Part of this site was located in Transformative Opportunity Site number 4. That site primarily took the east and the west side of the Atkinson and Velp corner. The two maps that are up on the screen right now represent the obviously the northwest corner of Velp and Atkinson, and they take in a small portion of this requested area. So the Velp Avenue area-wide plan took in about 20 acres of property at that corner. and recommended that for commercial, predominantly commercial and/or mixed-use development. And there were a couple concept plans inside that document. This was felt to be a gateway to the city from the highway, gateway into the downtown. And some of the concept plans were for sort of a big box retail and specifically more of a grocery style retail, but then also a smaller box with maybe some outlots along Velp Avenue. It's important to kind of point these out because the Velp Avenue plan, again, it's a supplement and kind of supersedes the comp plan. As I had mentioned, the comprehensive plan recommends general industrial and commercial. The petitioner is requesting to take an area, I'm going to go back to the aerial photo, take an area sort of out of the middle of that area and designate it for medium and high density housing, primarily to allow the development of a apartment campus, so a 72-unit multifamily apartment campus. So the comprehensive plan would have to be amended to change that to medium and high density housing. There is a set of criteria in our code that dictates when a comprehensive plan amendment is appropriate, and they are in your staff report. There's 10 different criteria. I'm not going to go over all of them, but the arguments for are in there. So kind of the big item is the Velp Avenue plan. So that kind of takes in this entire, without going to it, it takes in this entire corner for commercial uses. So that was really sort of the big conflicting item. So again, that incorporated the eastern portion of the lot. The petitioner did augment their plans slightly to try to make as much property available for future commercial use as possible. So his site itself is, as I said, about 8.9 acres. What he had done, and I'm going to go to the conceptual development plan, what he had done is kind of push the development a little bit to the west and then left a large area to the south open for potential consolidation and redevelopment as a commercial use. So the acreage that he's proposing for multifamily is a 7.9 acre portion of his 8.9 acre lot. So he's leaving about 1.1 acres to be developed for commercial in the future, or the potential to be developed for commercial in the future. And also very significant is leaving this area along the southern portion of his site to sort of consolidate with the lot to the south, giving enough depth along Velp Avenue, a little more than 250 feet of depth, to allow that Velp Avenue corridor to potentially be converted to a commercial use as well. Within your packet and within the petitioner's narrative, there was also a comparative of other commercial sites throughout the city, primarily grocery stores, but also smaller retailers, or mid-sized retailers, I should say. So of this area, which he shows at about a little over 7 acres of developable area for commercial at that corner of Velp and Atkinson, it's about 7.8 acres, 7.9 acres. It contains about 500 feet of frontage along Velp Avenue. Of that, about 3.2 acres is wetlands or wetland buffers, and that's not going to be used. So what's being left for potential commercial development is about a 4.7 acre area, contained in multiple lots, developed already with a auto sales use, commercial telecommunications center, a tower, and also a hub station, and then also a good portion of Gray Court, which could be vacated if that area is going to be developed. So again, one of the features that they had done with their development is they purposely aligned the driveway so that if this portion of Gray Court were to be vacated and consolidated into this commercial area, potential commercial area, that access could still be provided to the multifamily development and allow Gray Court to be vacated, as it is a substantial amount of property there as well. So basically, the removal of the area for commercial and general industrial does reduce the availability of commercial and mixed-use area in the future. However, it does not eliminate the potential for commercial uses. As you can see in your staff report, there's a range of different types of uses, and we listed out what uses those were. But they range anywhere from about 2 acres to about 6.5 acres for grocery stores, for pharmacies and retail centers. So the availability of about 4.7 acres, though not as much as what would have been original, is still very developable for commercial. So your real question when you're looking at the comp plan amendment is if medium to high density residential uses are appropriate at this location. I'm going to kind of go back to sort of this area plan. Go back to the map. Staff believes that the land use change is not inconsistent with the 10 criteria and goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. We don't believe that multifamily would have an adverse impact on the area. And we also feel that the provision of a different type of housing choice that currently does not exist on this northwest side of the city could be very advantageous to potential future development of a commercial corridor as you're putting more units and more people in the area. So we are recommending approval of the comp plan amendment as requested. And just to let you know, the public hearing notices were noticed. The petitioner had 2 neighborhood meetings, one in February, one in April. There were significant changes from the February submittal to the April submittal. Individual letters went out to property owners within the yellow circle, which is 400 feet away, to both Alderman Stoyer and Scannell. Alderman Scannell's district is here. Alderman Stoyer is also very connected with the Belt Corridor. The Mather Heights and Perkin Parks neighborhood associations were also noticed. So again, staff is recommending approval of the request. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is there any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Grimmer.
I would like to hear a little bit more about why you think this fits well with the bordering zone uses and why it fits well with the Velp Avenue plan, particularly because that plan identifies this sort of housing as the least compatible.
The Velp Avenue.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, I'll first start with the comprehensive plan itself. Now, while the change to a medium and high density housing designation may not fit exactly with the existing uses that are out there, so you have a lot of warehousing
A lot of industrial.
on the north and on the west. You sort of have kind of a commercial with auto-oriented commercial, and you have Parrot Homes, which is a home sales lot. While it is not super compatible with what's currently there, it would be compatible and has been shown to be compatible with commercial uses. So again, housing and commercial uses, especially in close proximity, generally lend themselves to each other. You have easy access between the two. It's almost a mixed-use area, but not a vertical. It's a horizontal mixed-use area.
And
So
I do
it'd be-
understand your argument that
Right.
having the housing there would likely encourage the development of the commercial, and that seems to me a particularly strong argument behind your recommendation.
As far as the Velp Avenue plan,
Yeah.
the Velp Avenue plan, once again, did not really go into, and I don't have the whole plan up here, but really didn't go any further west than sort of this shaded area. So it took both sides of the street, but it didn't really go further west. So for that, you have to fall back on the regular comp plan, which again, showed industrial and commercial. So, you know, the Velp Avenue plan, it is in compliance with, it's leaving enough commercial area on the corner to allow it to be developed with a variety of different commercial uses. And it's allowing the frontage to remain commercial, or have the potential to be commercial.
Okay, perhaps I'm not understanding the point up in the right-hand corner, the upper right-hand corner there. That is, as I understand it, something from the Velp Avenue Task Force. And they considered that the multifamily residential was the least compatible with their area-wide plan?
Well, No, they're saying that the multifamily residential at this location, at the corner, is least compatible with the corner.
Okay.
With the roundabout, with the commercial uses to the
Okay.
south, potential commercial uses to the east.
Okay.
So it's not for the whole plan itself, it's really just for this corner.
Thank you. That was my difficulty.
Any other discussion? Yes, Commissioner Petrovsky.
I have a follow-up about traffic. It appears from the renderings that there's only going to be one piece of access to the roadway, is that correct?
Sure, I'll address that and the petitioner can address it, but I guess the first thing I want to say before I do is this conceptual development plan is really just for informational for you. It's really the land use. Following the comp plan amendment, they would still have to go through a zone change to go to an R3 very density residential district and go through a site plan review and building permit issuance. So right now, the way their conceptual plan shows is an emergency exit going off to Buchanan and then the main driveway coming down to Gray Court. However, that could change during the site plan review. This was really a conceptual plan given by the petitioner to kind of let you know what areas are still going to be available for the commercial and give the neighboring property owners, steering committee, and the others that came to the meetings an idea of how that campus is going to function. So I didn't get into a lot of detail about the development plan because that could really change. It was really just sort of to give you a flavor of what they're looking to do.
Sure. If I could follow up on that then, has there been any research or investigation into whether there are sufficient right-of-ways to provide a second means of access if the site plan seems to require it?
Sure, there is the ability, 'cause again, when you look at the black boundary, this is the property itself, so there is access also onto Buchanan.
Okay.
But a good thing to point out, and I think it was a great question, is that, of course, traffic is going to increase with vacant land being developed. However, the amount of traffic generated from a residential use, even an apartment complex, is probably less or comparable to a commercial and industrial, the potentials for a commercial and industrial use. Also with residential, it's concentrated to really 2 times during the day, concentrated in the mornings and concentrated in the early afternoons, or late afternoons, I guess, where commercial could be a constant flow of traffic. So will there be traffic coming out of the site with the change of use? Yes, but it's negligible when considered the already permitted land uses that the comp plan would allow.
Any further discussion? Thank you.
I would move to open the floor for general comments.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to open the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there anybody in the audience that would wish to speak on this matter? Yes. Would you please state your name and your...
Sure. John Leroy Mountain Associates, 400 Security Boulevard. We are here on behalf of petitioner Jared Bigelow and Bigelow Rentals. I'll keep it short because I think that David's presentation summed up that pretty well. We've had great cooperation in this process to go ahead and we wanted to show to the neighborhood and to the community in general that of the general idea of what was going to go on here, not just say we'd like to place multifamily at this site. So, as David had mentioned, when it comes to zoning and actual site plan review, there'll be some changes likely to go, what's going to happen right here, but the general theme and how we're trying to go ahead and approach this, we want to go ahead and be straightforward with. As far as this process goes, we started back in winter and had, as David mentioned, 2 meetings with the neighbors at Elmore School, and they were both very productive meetings. I know you were in attendance right there. Great comments, led to some feedback as far as how we can go ahead and tweak this to make this really work with the relation to the Velp Avenue plan and how the transformative site number 4 can still have its feel and enhance the possibility of an actual development go ahead and occur right there. And to comfort the neighbors as far as this idea of a land use could work in the neighborhood. When it came to our takeaway from our first meeting back in February, from our initial plans, we happened to have some storage units on there. There were 3 takeaways. One, keep that transformative site available to go ahead and allow it to go ahead and flourish potentially here in the future. 2, there are already a lot of storage units on Velp. They didn't really want to see many more. And 3, multifamily, especially in this situation where it's a campus style, where you're focused around a pond and you're trying to go ahead and utilize some of the natural areas that are on site, is a good fit to go ahead and bring some more roofs to the neighborhood and potentially go ahead and make Velp Avenue, go ahead and keep on making it grow and fully utilize that plan. So there have been some very productive meetings, and we're pretty hopeful as far as where this can go and what this can go ahead and add to the neighborhood itself. If you have any questions, myself or developer Jared Bigelow is here as well to answer. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Pukowski.
Just more curiosity than anything else. Do you guys have a price point in mind that you're looking like low end, moderate, or higher end?
The upper fronts will be $795, and the backs will be $835, and the lowers will be about $9.
Okay.
Could you please state your name just for the record?
Gerald Bigelow.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yes,
if I might
Commissioner.
follow up with that, you referred to that in your not the oral presentation, but the written one as market rate affordable rents. And what does affordable mean in that case?
That is, for that type of building, everything in a city right now that's being built is around 11.
Okay.
That's very affordable.
And you're
and-
talking 8 to 9.
And it is the only apartment on the west side of Green Bay that has an attached garage. You don't have a one.
Thank
This will
you.
be your nicest ones on the west side of Green Bay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this matter? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the floor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Is there any further discussion among the commissioners? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the request. Any further discussion?
Let us know if you don't get a prompt.
Yay.
Does everybody got it?
I didn't receive one.
Mary?
I just haven't saved it yet. There you go.
Look like it worked. Did you get a prompt for the result?
I don't see one.
No.
No.
Approved.
Okay. Okay. So motion
So move on.
Yep.
Okay. Second item. Item 2, consideration with possible action on the request to authorize a conditional use permit to allow a car wash in a community center commercial district located at 1053 Velp Avenue, submitted by Kurt Belanger, Stone Ridge Holdings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request for a conditional use permit for a single bay car wash at 1053 Velp. It happens to be just across the street from the previous item that we were just discussing, which was up in this area here. Subject request is outlined in red here. It's on the south side of Velp Avenue at the end of Atkinson at the roundabout. This site was formerly a grocery store and retail, multi-tenant retail building. In 2009, it was redeveloped into a convenience store and a gas station. Multiple tenants in that space. Kind of land use up to the north. There's a credit union just to the west. There's single and two-family uses to the south and east of the property. The comprehensive plan recommends commercial in this area. It's kind of a band of red here, low density to the south. And the current zoning, again, is community center commercial or C3, and hence the need for conditional use permit for the car wash. Low density residential zoning to the south, medium density residential along Belt Avenue. So this request is to convert an existing space in the convenience store to a single bay car wash, and that would be on the west side of the structure. So again, here's the roundabout, the credit union up on the corner. This is the west edge of the building. They're going to take that western edge and make that a car wash on that side. You're going to retain basically the same facade, so to speak. So this is the south side or facing the residence. We'll add an overhead door for access from the south, an overhead door on the north side, and then hopefully retain this existing facade on the west side of the site. Again, access would come off of Gray Court here, through the west side of the building, and then out through either Bell or back through the credit. Staff has notified affected property owners. We did receive a few calls on this one. There is one email that I did receive that's attached within your agenda. Staff is recommending approval of this request with 4 conditions. I'll briefly go through those. Number 1 is compliance with all regulations of the Green Bay Municipal Code that covered under the CUP, including site plan review. That's kind of a catch-all that we have. Because of the nature of this use, sometimes noise is associated with that. I'd like to limit the hours of operation from 7 to 10. That's regulated under Chapter 27. Item 3, all lanes shall be a sharp cutoff variety and shall comply with the requirements of the zoning code. And finally, the retention of that west side for the transparency, so we don't have a kind of a solid wall. We keep the transparency of that wall that currently exists.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Gerber.
Please, you attached in the agenda items the letter from Greg DeMorel. And I'm having a little trouble because I could not read the numbers of the various houses in understanding what is being objected to and what is being supported in that letter. He objects to having a car wash located at 1029 or 1035 Velp Avenue because of proximity. Can you show us where 1029 and 1035 are?
Sure, I believe his property is right here.
Okay.
And
It's the second over, right, from the,
I believe so, and there's also another item on this agenda that deals with the surplus property here, so I think that's his immediate concern, is that he doesn't want to see a car wash on this
Right
particular
there.
property. But he
okay.
is some distance from this proposed car wash.
And he was concerned also for impacting his neighbors about 1053 Velp.
I don't know if that might be the, well, 1053 Velp would be the actual address of.
I'm actually here. So
I beg your pardon?
I'm actually here.
That would be helpful. Maybe you could point out where
Sure.
where you were objecting and where you
Sure.
weren't.
Yeah. So
As I
if
say,
it's-
the maps are,
If it's
Difficult.
here and the blowers are on this side, I think it will be fine because it won't make a loud noise
Okay.
for these neighbors that are adjacent, right, in this area.
you were concerned that it might be on the
Right.
the southeast end.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That was my only concern, was making sure that I'd read that concern.
Because the blowers are always really.
Is there any other further discussion? Thanks, Paul. The chair would entertain a motion to open the floor.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second to open the floor. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak on this matter? Anybody wishing to speak? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, entertain a motion to close the floor.
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Floor is closed. Any further discussion among the commissioners?
Motion approved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the request. Any further discussion?
That's approving the request subject to the 4 qualifications.
I believe so, yes. Okay. Please vote now.
That was 3, please vote now, not 3, not please vote no, right, Tim?
Right, well, either way.
That passed as well.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
So back here, what's your friend? You scroll down,
Next item, item 3. Consideration with possible action on the request to create a planned unit development at 215 North Webster Avenue, submitted by Lindsay S. Bovenet, on behalf of Whitney School Development LLC property owner.
Attachments.
Hey, Mr. Chair, this is a request to create a planned unit development at 215 North Webster, and that property is highlighted in red here. It's along North Webster, with North Van Buren, between Cherry and Pine Street. This is the former Whitney School building. To the north, you've got the CVS Pharmacy, Whitney Park Townhomes, Whitney Park, and then kind of a mixture of single and two-family homes around the border or perimeter of the site. The comprehensive plan recommends high-intensity retail office or housing. That's kind of our mixed-use district. And the current zoning is office residential. So, as I mentioned, this is a conversion of the Whitney School to 23 residential units in the existing school here. So this is North Webster, Pine, and Cherry, and Van Buren. And then a total of 12 townhomes that will be constructed, 9 along South Van Buren, and then another 3 along Pine Street. So there's a proposal to create 2 separate lots here. There'll be one lot for the Whitney School portion and for the townhomes to the north. Access mainly comes off of Pine and Cherry Streets, and there is some shared access here, of course, between the 2 developments. The townhomes, these are kind of 2 perspective views, one looking from Cherry and Van Buren, another looking from Pine and Van Buren as well. These are kind of metal roofs with kind of a shed roof design, vinyl siding, wood and metal exteriors. So the staff has put together a planning and development. We worked with the developer a little bit on that language. I didn't have to bring your agenda tonight. The developer is here if you have any questions of them. We did notify property owners. We didn't receive any responses. So our recommendation tonight is approval of the request, subject to the draft PUD.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Motion to open the floor.
Commissioner Bemmer?
Oh, motion to open the floor,
Oh.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to open the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Floor is open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this?
I just have a question.
Okay, if you could approach the podium, please, and state your name and address.
I'm Donna Stregenbach, and I own the Bridal Church on the corner of Cherry and Van Buren. And I believe I am zoned for business, and I guess I'm wondering how this is going to affect me. Yeah, I'm right on the corner of Cherry and Van Buren. where the
We've
homes
got
are
the
gonna
map
go.
up there, you can point it out.
Okay. So will I still have the same zoning and ability to have it as a business? Or will this affect it?
Well, this agenda does not affect your properties, so,
I'm left out of that even though I'm right there.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, thank you.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this? Is there anybody else? No? Okay, thank you.
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Floor is closed. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Commissioner Brennan.
By way of further discussion, two things stand out for me very positively with this proposal. One is that it very nicely lines up with the Bader development of townhomes along Whitney Park. Another is that it protects a historical property. But with that in mind, I would like to offer an amendment to the PUD. Point L, the last point in the PUD, calls for compliance with all related historic preservation measures as required by federal and state of Wisconsin requirements. And I would like to add to that, as well as advisory review by the Green Bay Historical Preservation Commission. That seems in keeping with the intent to repurpose a historical property here, and I would like that represented in the PUD itself. I'll make that motion at whatever point we're dealing with motions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner.
I'd like to just make a little record, because I have an indirect interest in this property, because I live in the Whitney Park townhomes. I reviewed the ethics code, and I don't think it requires my recusal, but I would like to disclose that in some way, shape, or form, this is likely to impact my property value one way or the other. So I don't intend to abstain or recuse myself from the vote, but I do want to make a record.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve this item with the conditions so stated.
We need to, the amendment. We got a motion and a
So we
second.
Do we have a
We need to,
second?
we're gonna amend, we need
Yes.
to add the amendment first.
Oh, okay.
And then approve as amended.
So I will make a motion to
To add
add,
the amendment.
as well as advisory review by the Green Bay Historical Preservation Commission.
Second the amendment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to add the amendment to the request. Any further discussion on that?
We're gonna vote the amendment.
Just on voice?
Just on the amendment. Yeah, I mean, if you want to vote, place in the amendment.
Okay, you can place your
Or-
vote now.
Okay.
Okay, now we're ready for the vote on the item with the amendment.
Thank you.
I would move to approve the recommendation with the included amendment.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we now have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation with the amendment included. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, will you please vote now?
Motion passed.
Thank you. Next item, item 4. Consideration with possible action to amend multiple sections of the zoning ordinance affected by 2017 Wisconsin Act 67.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did have a brief workshop on this about a month ago, I believe, maybe 2 months ago. So in November 2017, state legislature passed 2017 Wisconsin Act 67. That made, it's also known as the Homeowner Bill of Rights. It did change the state statutes, and it addressed a lot of different items affecting land use regulation by towns, cities, counties. Addressed multiple items. So once that was approved and adopted, staff, planning staff, city's attorney's office looked through our zoning ordinance to make sure we were in compliance with the new state statutes. And what we came up with is basically 4 general areas that needed to be amended. And there, I'll go over them in a little more detail, but one deals with findings and recommendations of conditional uses, expiration of conditional uses, approvals, dealing with non-conforming lots, and also with land use tables as far as conditional use go. And I'll just go through each one of these relatively quickly. Hopefully that red is coming out okay. So what you're seeing, you're going to see our code on the bottom. What's in red strike through is obviously being recommended to be removed. If you see blue on here, it's recommended to be added. So the first one is findings and recommendations for CUPs. So what the statute did is it basically made denials of conditional use permits no longer to be permitted based solely on public testimony. So what you need to do is, from a city standpoint, it's our burden of proof, to prove with substantial evidence that there is going to be a negative impact on the surrounding area by that conditional use permit. So, but what really kicked out in our code really big was we have a provision in our code for conditional uses that basically 20% of surrounding properties or area property owners, if they object to the conditional use permit, it requires a 3/4 majority vote of the council to actually approve it. That would be potential conflict with the state statute, being that that is not based on substantial evidence, it's just based on objection. So what we are recommending is just to strike that right out of the code. So it basically still says that the Plan Commission reports to council their findings and makes a recommendation, and then the council would just go ahead and have a regular vote regardless if there's an objection. This is common language that you'll find in zoning codes. It's typical with a rezone or a zone change. Not as typical with conditional use permits. But so that's the first one, is to remove that, to go into, to take away the potential conflict with the statute. The second one is really just a verbiage change. So Act 67 requires conditional use permits to remain active as long as the conditions that are in the code or the conditions that are applied by the council or zoning board are upheld by the petitioner or the landowner. So our code had an expiration for conditional use permits. So if it hadn't been established within 12 months of being approved, or if the use was discontinued for 12 consecutive months, the conditional use permit would expire. That is, goes against state statute now because we cannot make them expire. However, the statute does allow us to require renewal. So it's not expiring, it doesn't go away, but you'd have to come back and renew it. That would give the Plan Commission, the neighbors, the City Council, the ability to see if conditions in the area had changed that would affect the conditional use permit. But what that renewal would allow, if they're still meeting all their conditions and all other factors remain the same, it would be a renewal rather than expiration. So we're basically removing the expiration language and adding in renewal, but otherwise it's remaining all the same. Third section deals with non-conforming lots. Currently, non-conforming lots in our code must be combined before they're either used for permitted use or, well, in our code that's it. The new statute basically forbids any municipality from taking any action that would prohibit the use of a non-conforming lot. So a non-conforming lot is one that's not big enough in area, doesn't have enough frontage, not enough depth maybe, no street access. Those types of things make a lot non-conforming. So the new statute basically forbids any action that prohibits that lot from being sold or being used for permitted use. They did provide one caveat, that if buildings were built over the lot line or on the adjacent lot, then you could still consider that non-conforming and not let it be used, because obviously you can't sell off something that's got a building over the top. So what we're recommending is removing the language that requires lots in the same ownership next to each other non-conforming to be consolidated before they're used, and adding that new language that the legislature put in, saying that as long as it has not been developed with one or more structures placed partly on an adjacent lot. So again, this is just, all of these are just kind of cleanups. We really didn't have that much conflict in our code. The last one is one that is not completely dictated by statute, but it is a very common practice that's kind of going all over the state right now. It's sort of a response to Act 67. So 67 essentially makes conditional use permits permitted uses with conditions. Currently, conditional uses are generally, if the council and the community feel it's not acceptable, that it can be denied. So what the legislation did is saying, no, you can't deny it if they meet conditions, and you can't show substantial evidence that it can't meet those conditions. So that is kind of a very drastic thing. Almost all codes, almost all zoning codes use conditional use for things that maybe it would fit in some circumstances, but maybe not in others, and allowed that judgment for the community to make comment and the Plan Commission and Council to make judgment. That has been removed now. So some of the conditional use permits in our code have the potential to be very negative to a community. Some of them just don't mesh, so very high density stuff in low density districts. Generally there's conflict with density, maybe traffic patterns, maybe design of sites and how they function. And so what we did is went through our conditional use permits in basically 4 of our districts. We went through all of our districts. These were the ones that we thought could be problematic, and we're recommending these be removed from the code as conditional uses. What that's going to do is basically make, if you're looking to do one of these uses in a specific site and the zoning doesn't allow it, you would have to rezone the site. So doing a zone change, you go through Plan Commission and Council, and those you can base it much more on community opinion and non-substantiated or not heavy analysis, just basically on potential. So I'll just go through them real super quick. In the residential districts, we're looking at removing rooming houses and boarding houses from our single family and our 2-family districts. Large community living arrangements, so it's 9 to 15 people in one unit out of our single family and our 2-family districts. Dormitories, which I think you all kind of know what those are, out of our 2-family district. Large daycare centers, so 9 or more children out of the 2-family district. Agricultural uses out of all of our residential districts. And large-scale outdoor commercial recreation out of all of our residential districts. And I should point out that all of these uses are still permitted in other districts. None of them are being removed from the code. They're just being pulled as conditional uses. So in our mixed-use districts, which is our downtown district, our neighborhood commercial, which are the only 2 affected here, we're pulling quite a few out of there. So motels, which is a ground floor business with individual entry out of downtown, restaurant with drive-thrus out of downtown, building material sales, firearms sales out of downtown. Most of the automobile-oriented uses, like rentals, sales, car washes, and surface parking lots as a principal use, as the only use on the site, we're recommending those come out of our neighborhood commercial and our downtown districts. And you can kind of see the conflict that those might have with the neighborhood commercial or a dense downtown area with a lot of mixed uses. In our commercial districts, there's much less as you get commercial and industrial, obviously. But in the commercial districts, you have sort of just the opposite. There was community living arrangements of any size in our general commercial district. Those have very conflicting site plans, very conflicting use of the lots. So we're recommending those come out as conditional uses, and also dormitories out of a general commercial district. And then in the industrial district, the only one that we thought was very problematic was the daycare or preschool for 9 or more children in our light industrial district. Again, in some cases they may have been very suitable for certain areas, but the way the statute is now written, that ability to do judgment on that has been taken away from local level. And so these are kind of the ones that we're very concerned about. There's still a lot of conditional uses in our code, but we felt that with the conditions that are in the zoning code and the conditions that we put on staff, that they would still be acceptable. And so with that, we are recommending approval of the code section changes as I went through them, subject to the draft ordinance that's in the packet. Yes, ma'am.
So is it just, some of the stuff is just verbiage changes, because going from renewal to expire, I mean, if somebody doesn't renew it, what happens? I mean,
Well, we would have to contact.
but it's
they
just
would have
that
to renew
positive
it.
wording to follow the state statutes?
Correct. They could request that the CUP be dissolved
Okay.
if they didn't want to renew it.
It would just be discontinued if they didn't renew it?
It wouldn't expire.
Okay, got it.
Is there any further, Commissioner Grimmer?
I appreciate you, if you could go back to the list that you just had there. You addressed my major concern. There's still places in the city that are zoned for these things.
Correct. Either through straight permitted uses, where you just pull a building permit, or through conditional uses, where it would still go through the process.
Okay. But, and am I right in assuming that businesses that are currently there are grandfathered in?
Correct, they would all be considered legal non-conforming uses.
Okay. And could you give me an example, for instance, for the group daycare center? What areas are zoned that would be permitted or conditional use?
Sure.
You
I got my
took it
big
out of
list.
R1 and 2?
So a group daycare
Or
center,
R2 rather. We're saying it couldn't go into the industrial districts or the R2.
right, just a second, let me find it on my giant list here. So a group daycare, which is greater than 9, is permitted in the multifamily district. It's permitted in all of our mixed-use districts, so the office residential, the neighborhood commercial, and the downtown. It's permitted in all of the commercial districts, the C1, C2, and C3, and also permitted in the business park. And it would be a conditional use still in our special residential light industrial district, which is kind of limited to one area of the city.
That takes care of my concern. Thank you.
Commissioner Pekowski.
Thank you. I guess just to put kind of a fine point, if I'm reading this correctly, it seems that the objective of the state law was to strip local governing bodies from the ability to deny conditional use permits, but for extreme circumstances. It seems that the objective of, in particular, this portion of the proposal is designed to give some of that flexibility back to the governing bodies. Is that an accurate synopsis?
I would tweak it just a little
Okay.
bit. Really what they're trying to do is put a very expensive and time-consuming burden of proof on the municipalities to prove that it's going to be have a negative impact. So if you say that potentially it's got a lot of traffic issues that could come with a outdoor commercial recreation center, we would have to do a traffic study, hire an engineer to do a traffic study to prove that, where currently we could say these typically generate X number of vehicles going onto a local road, it's going to be an issue. We'd have to prove that. So basically, it was I guess to answer your question, it puts more burden onto the municipality to do that. Where with a zone change, we could request the petitioner do that, and then rezone the property.
Thank you. Commissioner Vespi.
What if the property is sold? Does the use remain the same, or so
Yes.
it's always grandfathered forever?
As long as it remains
That business?
in place, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be true for grandfather, well, for properties already there that have been given CUPs before.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak on this? Okay, thank you. With no further discussion, the chair would entertain a motion.
Motion to close before?
Nobody's going to speak.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the item, or items. Any further discussion? Hearing none? Please vote now.
Motion passed.
Motion passes, thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 5. Consideration with possible action on a request to declare city property surplus at 1029, 1035, and 1039 Velp Avenue, submitted by Kurt Belanger, Stone Ridge Holdings, LLC.
Thank you. So this area of town we're very popular with today. The properties that we're looking at specifically are these 3 parcels here. These were originally acquired by our Department of Public Works when Velp Avenue was reconstructed. There's a lot of property on Velp that kind of looks like this. It's just leftover chunks of land. Some are larger than others, some are smaller. This one in particular has part of our right-of-way still existing in it, and then access drive into the gas station we were discussing earlier. the request is to declare it surplus. When we receive a surplus application and it's been through the right-of-way acquisition process, we first have the right to offer that to other city departments or municipality departments that might want to use it for sale or for their own use. Throughout that, we did discover that the redevelopment authority for the city of Green Bay is interested in marketing and sale of this property. Typically, if it's a smaller piece of land, we can go through the surplus property process to just give it to the adjoining property owners because there's not much use or value that we can get out of the property. But when it comes to the larger buildable lots, specifically one that's on a major intersection, we want to make sure that the city is doing the correct type of marketing and sale to get the highest and best land use out of that. So with that, this is the proposal that we have for acceptance of the surplus declaration. So in the blue area here, we are looking to retain that as right-of-way because it's already existing right-of-way. We have an agreement over that parcel, but that should just be retained as part of our basic right-of-way mapping. The purple section here could go to the petitioner as part of the property owner because this is already part of their access drive. We have an access agreement, but it would be easier for the property owner to just simply have the property. The yellow portion here, we would need an access right over because there's no access allowed on Velp Avenue in this portion. So if we were to do sale of this property, we would need some sort of access from this area either way. And then the portion outlined in green would be combined into one lot, and then we would have that go from DPW to our redevelopment authority for marketing and sale. So I do believe that the petitioner is interested in purchasing this property, which would still be available to him and anybody else who would go through that RFP process to put in a petition to get that parcel. So with that, the first condition of our approval would be what I just explained to you, those different colors, where those should be allocated and who should get first dibs at those. And then conditions 2 through 6 are from our DPW department. They are just looking to make sure that we still have access to our storm sewer that's existing there, cross access easements to make sure that everything is maintained with access there. And then the rest of that is mostly just the sale and cost of the land going back to the appropriate bodies. Because they purchase through a certain department, they have to give it back through that specific department. So with those conditions, we are recommending approval of the request.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I'm not able to get this to help me pull up the neighbor email, which
Yes.
I did not see on the materials that I received through the web earlier today. So could you share with me?
It was the same email that Paul got for the last application, actually. So the property owner just sent one email to both Paul and I that had the same thing, that they're not looking at the car wash in their backyard, but they would prefer to be in the other site.
I thought it was different names. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak on this matter? Okay. Do we have a motion to open the floor?
So moved.
Do we have a motion and a second to open the floor? All in
Motion open
favor?
the floor.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Would you please state your name and address, please?
Yep, my name is Greg Delarvo, and I live at 2765 Moose Creek Trail.
Thank you.
I used to live in the property here that I still own it. So my concern would be is if this is sold to the adjoining property owner, that if he decides he wants to put the car wash there, I have one tenant that works third shift, and it definitely would devalue my property. And then you got the lighting from the car wash, the noise, plus the safety of people getting in and out of it. So those are my concerns.
Paul, would that be something that would come back here at that time?
If there's a zoning change, it'll come back here, yes.
What is the current zoning for this?
Medium density residential, or R2.
Okay.
Which would not allow a car wash, for
It would need a
instance.
commercial C2 zoning.
Right. Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Yes.
My name's Kurt Belanger. I live 3125 Dave Sutherland Road. I am the owner of the gas station that's located at 1053. I'm also the owner of this house located right here. And I am the one that put in the petition to purchase or take that over. I've got some stuff I'm just going to quickly hand out here so that you can kind of follow through. I just want to go through just kind of a breakdown of what's happened and transpired in the last probably 18 months. I've been trying to acquire this property, going back and forth. I've met with the city on different times, and I've not been able to get any kind of resolution. So basically, first of all, part of the Green Bay Comprehensive Plan, this section of Velp Avenue is supposed to be considered commercial, okay? Part of the Velp plan that was just done, if you look at that, this property was identified in the same plan as far as the zone, if you will. So on this first page, if you look at it, I submitted this plan, or this action, and I submitted it for 2 companies. I had a lot of time, I talked different back and forth with Paul Newmeyer and whatnot. I couldn't really get an answer to exactly how to do it for 2 companies. So I submitted and I just put it down in detail. So I'm actually requesting that it would go into a couple different landowners. The first one would be the green area, or the purple area. This front yard should actually go to the gas station. It's about 500 square feet. Makes most sense. When I went down there, we look at the second page. I spoke with Mr. Vaughn, and it came back in email form that basically they're doing the redevelopment of Velp, and they're looking to align the sign, the development with the plans. So they're waiting for June to go through and revisit. Then, June 6th, I met with Stephanie, I believe there was a Matt, and so we sat down, and this was the recommendation. The recommendation says that she would like for my company to take over this purple area, which would take over all responsibilities and all maintenance of that driveway that comes off the roundabout. Give the yellow line access easement into the green, and then they would like to sell it to someone for redevelopment. And I said, well, I want to be the guy to buy it. And at that point, I was talking about a car wash. We don't really need to go any further with car wash, because I was the earlier one that got the car wash approved. So basically, she suggested a Starbucks. And that was a common thing that was coming back and forth, was a Starbucks, that they believe this is a high traffic area, and that'd be a perfect for a Starbucks. I responded, I own a gas station, we sell coffee, I don't want a Starbucks next to me. Makes most sense, right? So anyway, what was supposed to happen, from my acknowledgement, is this blue area, which is right away, was supposed to be taken off. So if you look down in this page with the email dated June 6th, it goes through what their requirements are, or their suggestions, which is what it is today, my acknowledgement of the way she's asking for it. It's asking me to take on that purple area and then let anyone try to buy the green area. I am trying to buy the green area in the same sit-down, and I've offered about $40,000 for it. That you'll find as we go further. So if you look then on the next 2 pages, because they have this up here so we didn't have to go to the color page, or the black and white page. The next one would be today's date. And it says, please find the attached recommendations of your application for tonight's planning meeting. They're on the same presence as what they were a year and a half ago. I, on the next one, included that on the 17th of April, she asked me if we could email her a digital version of the plan. I did that. That digital version of the plan got no answers or no questions to us. I got this email today that states we're on the same plan as we were a year and a half ago. And if we look at the recommendations that's going down further, on the next page, that it basically says that they're suggesting that that green part goes out to public auction or public for sale. I, in order to do this, would have to give up access, but take maintenance of this area. It has been somewhat of a problem, especially the last snowfall. The last snowfall, I had the city come in, and in the beginning, we had no problems with it. I told them, we didn't have a tenant on the end, put the snow in the corner. So whenever they gotta clean the property they own, they literally bring a truckload of snow down. This last time, as you know, it was an unbelievable amount. But they barricaded off the back here. I had to get payloaders in, cost me a couple $100. There's kind of an issue because of the way this property is of maintaining that. I don't feel that I have to take on 100% of that maintenance if I'm not gonna take ownership of that property. So the reason I'm here and doing this is so you guys understand a little bit more of the background. This parcel is only 12,000 square feet. It's not like this is something that's gonna make Velp Avenue what it's gonna be. It's 12,000 square feet. Personally, if I lived in your duplex, I don't think I'd want a Starbucks there because of how much traffic you're gonna get. And you're gonna be on the PA, you're gonna be hearing that and whatnot. That's my personal opinion, but that's not what we got here. So, going a little further, the assessor's valuation for 1039 is 5,200, 1035 is 5,200, 1029 is 24,500. The recommendation, here again, is for surplus of the right-of-way. I'm supposed to take everything over in the purple. They're gonna cut the street out, and then they're gonna go to put the green for sale. Fourth thing is, sale must be fair market value. Sixth thing would be, all costs of the survey and described surplus property must be paid by me. If I'm gonna take over ownership of this, take on the maintenance of it, and not have for sure where I can buy this property, why would I pay for surveying everything off of there so that I'm burdened all the costs? To me, that does not make sense. The final thing on this one is attachment 17-03, surplus property policy final draft, 10.13.17, which is the next page. So, since I've been trying to get this property as of the beginning of 17, after I was told in June that I either take it or otherwise they had to take and survey out the right-of-way, so I was waiting for that to happen. Now they've changed and they created a policy on how to get rid of surplus. But they know I've been knocking on the door the whole time to get this property. And if you look at this, here again, dated 11/13/2017. And it says, potential for development of parcel and/or need for parcel to contribute to nearby development, market value of the parcel being significantly higher than the city would receive for sale. Here again, I'm offering $40,000 for this lot right here. Okay, you'll see in a minute what the value is equation-wise. You actually saw it on the slip before what the city values it at. The other thing is, this property right here used to have this green space here. The individual that designed it, built it, gave away that property unbeknownst to the city before I got it. So now we are in a hardship. We're non-conforming. We don't have green space. Technically speaking, this could become our green space for this parcel and put us in compliance. Not down the street, you know, we need something that's contiguous. And if we take over ownership of this, this is contiguous. So then it would fall underneath the green space. Got a couple other pictures. This next one shows you, I was trying to identify the letter and where his duplex was. It is the second one over on the Coppins Way. The next one's the color picture there. This one is actually your Velp corridor, showing that the property's in the Velp corridor. identified but not having any plans on it. Then we've got, I hired a realtor. The realtor did some assessments on things. If you look at the dates, we've been continuously talking with the city, trying to see if we can get this. I guess that's what I'm trying to stress to you guys. And it says, I talked with the staff, and they would like to see a development at location that would be more of a Kickstarter for future development. After looking it over and considering staff comments, I agree with them. This comes from 7th District. Here again, this is a 12,000 square foot piece of property. It's gonna be hard to get anything on here conforming. And we've sat down and talked with planning on it. It's gonna be hard. So the next one is gonna be identifying the parcels. And the follow-on with it has parcel numbers, are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it tells you the cost of square foot that those properties are assessed at. So the subject property, if you take the whole thing in consideration, is worth an average of 2.35 per square foot, equaling approximately $35,000. And we are offering $40,000, which is above and beyond what market value is. It could help us out for non-conformance. There's a lot of different things that it could do for us. But here again, I own this property. If the city wants to see a commercial development like senior zoning, at some point, this is residential, could be attached to here, I could come back and go for a rezone and actually do a development there. I have the best opportunity to develop that parcel because I own everything around it, on each side of it. Maybe it stays as green space. They asked for some picture, I gave them a picture. They never responded back to me with any questions about the picture. They never asked me, what tenants do you have lined up, or anything. All I'm trying to do is acquire that property, and then if anything, we could do something with it. So, the next one's just an email again coming back, saying something about, I wrote to Mr. Vaughn about possibilities of the property. He wrote me back that Matthew, Stephanie, and Aaron have worked on some concepts, and I believe that you've contacted them before, and they're anxious to show us. Here again, I've not gotten a call. I've been knocking on doors. I've tried to go through this process. I'd like to acquire the property. I'd like to take it and put it on the tax roll. And it would be a residential at this point until I come back to you for some kind of game plan to make it something else. And then it would have to go through the zoning and get everything qualified for it. So basically, I'm here today to ask you guys, I submitted for a surplus because that's what this had to be called. I want to buy that land. I don't want to take acceptance of this unless if I can do this. So I don't know if we can do everything all at once, but I don't want to pay to survey this off to grab 500 square feet of front yard that the city has to maintain this for someone else to come in here and control it. It does not make any business sense, it makes no logic. So I'm standing here saying, hey, I've been trying to work with the city. I would like to acquire it, put a price on it. I'll accept if I can take the whole thing. So I don't know who here knows how to do this, but that's what I'm standing here for.
So, the item on the agenda for us right now is strictly for the care of the surplus property?
Correct, yes.
Anything else would be,
We
Would
really
be
can't
out
speak,
of our
we
hands.
can't speak to the zoning, we can't speak to the sale of the property, just whether or not.
it should be surplus?
Correct.
Yes, again, this does not negate his ability to purchase this property. It gives it to the RDA, who should be doing this on behalf of the city.
Right.
That's why we created the policy in the first place, because we had so many of these situations at Plan Commission where it's like, can you build on it? Should you build on it? And we don't want to have that go through the wrong body any longer.
Right.
So the smaller parcels, we would recommend those things be attached, but he does not have to accept that. If he is not interested in that purple portion, it would be up to him to get that through
Right.
this process. If he's uninterested, that could just remain as part of the city's property as well.
Right.
So again, this just makes that larger parcel that is buildable, something that would go through a sale process that is not controlled by this body, because we should not be the people controlling that. That should go through the RDA.
Okay, so this item on the agenda is strictly to declare surplus property?
Yes.
and what happens
Anything
after
that's
that?
purchased after from DPW has to go through this property. We're not allowed to dispose of it in any way. So then from there, it would go through this process depending on how you rate those conditions. And again, I believe that item number 6, DPW put that condition on with the caveat that they assumed that the petitioner would be the one going for this property. But I think that whoever received it would be the one being required to do the surveying. So if the RDA was the one who got the green parcel, they would then be responsible. So if we wanted to amend that language to note that whoever was receiving of that property versus the petitioner, I believe that was the intent of that condition.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bremer.
Addressing the question of the surplus, as I recall, and again, I'm not able to pull things up quickly enough here, the recommendation does, however, have to do with where the various surplus properties would be assigned.
Yes, that's our staff recommendation, but if the applicant is not comfortable with that, those are amendable.
Okay.
We would recommend denial if this would go to direct sale, because I don't find that to be an appropriate action for surplus, which is dictated by our new policy.
What I'm not understanding is why you would recommend the purple part be assigned to the owner of the gas station if the yellow part is to be an easement into the other property.
There's already an access agreement over that property between the city and the owner, that this would just clean it up, that his driveway would be his, and then the city's right of way would be the city's. Versus right now, there's access agreements over it because we own that property. So that's mostly a cleanup item. But if, again, if the applicant's not interested in that, we don't have to go that route. We already have an agreement in place.
And am I correct in understanding then that the blue, as I recall, is continuing right-of-way?
Yes.
And is it the case that an access to the green lot line property could not go through that right-of-way, or could it?
Could not. There's not enough space there, and it's already built out with the curb.
Okay.
So the yellow access would be required in order for anyone to use this lot functionally, unless we just divvied it off to the adjoining property owners and they got really big lawns. So that would be the only way we could do that without the access easement. But we do have some control over the situation because we already have an existing agreement with the property owner, so.
So, in other words, just to take one step further, to put it in your heads of what I would like to see. It's one thing if I take over this grass, but I wouldn't be willing to take this over or pay for the entire survey unless I had acquired this. So, if we have to go through surplus, which I tried to do a year ago, and I was refunded the money, because I thought you were gonna take the right-of-way out. That's what I believe was said.
Inaccurate, okay.
Okay, so this was supposed to be surveyed out, and we need to start this process. I've been trying to do this for a year and a half. So if I end up with the grass here as part of the surplus, and then I come back and I buy this, and you put your assessment costs or your surveying cost into it, then we could just do a manual or some kind of contractual release of the right-of-way that we already have agreements on. So that would be something when you guys do a vote versus this is the way it is. That's what I'd rather kind of see is if this is considered surplus, then go surplus and then go RDA. But it has to be done either in two pieces or there's got to be multiple functions instead of take it or leave it.
Well, all we would
Is what
do,
I'm
just,
asking
all we
for.
would do here now is declare that those three parcels surplus property. That is the item before us at the present
I
time.
don't know
I
if
thought
that's
the
correct, is
recommendation
it?
included where those various pieces would be assigned. And that's the concern here.
Would it?
So the recommendation that I wrote was that, you know, each of those colors has their specific assignments. If you guys are uncomfortable with those assignments, that would need to be amended here.
Okay.
What I'm saying though is that through this policy, the RDA should be the body to dispose of the buildable lot. The other ones, those are things we offer to property owners. If they don't want them, we don't force property on anybody.
Okay.
So if he gets this agreement, we go, this purple parcel is available now, and he goes, I don't want it, he doesn't take it.
Okay.
It's that simple. Versus the right of way, we would then survey out if this does become surplus property.
Okay.
So just to be clear, one option that we would have today would be to declare this as surplus property without making any kind of assignment whatsoever. And then the assignment could be done down the road depending upon the outcome of the sale of that green area. Is that accurate?
Once something's declared surplus, the existing process allows it to be put up for sale through like our assessor's office with the help of our office, which is not how we want to go forward with buildable lots. So that's why in our policy it says these should be offered to other municipalities or other municipal departments first, And then through this process, when we get those, yes, we want this, and DPW goes, yes, we want to give it to them, that's what should happen here. So if you guys are uncomfortable making any recommendation, it really negates the policy that we have in place. But if you are comfortable with following DPW and the RDA's recommendation to put that up for sale to the public, this would be the time to do that. So if the other portions are not agreeable, I believe those would be amendable. But if we just push this through as it's surplus for surplus for surplus, then we could end up selling it for $1, which is why we put this policy in place the first time. So you kept running into that issue where we were underselling or giving it to the wrong use, the wrong function. Property owners who were adjacent were getting upset because they weren't being notified with enough time. So this policy was supposed to fix that.
So I need to pursue it a little bit further here, Stephanie. Is one of our options then to declare the green bordered and the blue bordered areas surplus and assign them as you have them and not do anything with the purple area for right now?
The blue area is municipal, so you can't.
That's right.
Right,
That's
that's
right away, so you don't
right
want
away.
to surplus that.
Well,
'Cause that's the-
her assignment was to right of way.
It's tricky because these lot lines don't line up with what we're proposing. Like, they're all straight lot lines as if they were buildable lots.
Because it were.
So if we take out the purple part, then the city needs to survey that part out and leave that as a lot, which I don't think we want to get into the business of doing either, because then we're creating another surplus lot that's completely insufficient at that point. Versus if it's all declared surplus and nothing happens to the purple lot, then nothing happens to the purple lot. You know, it remains the same as it is now.
But I couldn't buy it, so we have to be here to do something with it to move it to the next step. That's kind of why I'm here. That's why I
Yes.
spent a couple $100 just for this application to figure out how I can acquire that piece of land. And whether it stays as just raw land connected to my rental house as residential, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just trying to acquire that property because I feel in some point, if I come back to say, hey, I want to put this tenant in there, they could come back and say, well, we don't have enough green space, or we don't have this because of the non-conforming laws. I just am trying to safeguard myself. So this no longer is about putting a car wash there. This is
No, I
about
understood
attaching
that.
it
Right.
and taking
Yeah.
control of what's there for my future.
And what I'm trying to find out, is there some way that we can free as surplus property to be sold by the RDA, the section that has the green around it?
That's what we're recommending.
Yeah.
Yes, but without touching the other stuff.
I just don't want to take over the purple and.
Now, I understand, please allow me to
Yeah.
find
Yes.
out.
I might have to defer to Kevin on this one. I don't think that's a good idea for the city, for how we dispose of property, to start locking things off versus just declaring it all surplus and then assigning those where they need to go after the fact. But I might have to defer to Kevin.
So, the reason we came up with this policy was, I think as Ms. Hummel said, we ran into a number of issues with public right-of-way or DPW lots or things from construction projects. There was this lot, the parking lot S, Simonette's over on Main Street. There's also, probably come before you someday, a triangle on Mason and Finger, you know, where that goes out way on the very far east side. And we have these lots that aren't just like, okay, the survey line was wrong, like the Greenwood one, where it's like, okay, there's 10 feet to give the adjacent property owner. We have, in essence, buildable lots. And so I think that was very important in terms of when we look through at staff, to look at, okay, if it's a buildable lot, there needs to be a process to try and get something buildable on that property. And the proper way to dispose of that would be either through the redevelopment authority or the economic development authority, depending where it was, but
Yeah.
to get something to build on it. With that, the parcels that we have in this section right here, 3 of them, 3 plus, are buildable, or say 1.5.
One is-
The other ones aren't, because there's infrastructure located right there.
Mhm.
So to go back to, you know, fulfilling a recommendation of what we should do, I think the reason this recommendation was put forth is from the city's interest, and I think, you know, we're looking at protecting the city, is that this moves it forward in a way that basically cleans up remnants of a past infrastructure and past development. And so what it does is it makes a new property line for that buildable parcel, that's the green. But then it takes away and basically either turns into right-of-way, which is the stub off of the roundabout. Something that should be retained as right-of-way that DPW has felt, given where the sidewalks are at and where that access is at, and just some protocol in terms of having private driveways off a roundabout versus having public
Yes.
streets. It still maintains that for that roundabout there. And then the remainder piece, the purple magenta piece, isn't a buildable lot. But in essence, really, that's when we talk about other practice of these unbuildable lots that we look at ceding to the adjacent property owner. And in this case, I think the recommendation would be to cede it, to Mr. Belanger in terms of that that's adjacent to his parcel, so it can kind of straighten up a property line there. So as far as, again, I think in terms of declaring something surplus, you can't force anybody to take a property. So, there has to be somebody willing on the end to accept it. With that, I think what was proposed here still moves this on a path forward. To get this property moving forward, I think we would have to have some further discussion if Mr. Belanger, if we did this amendment and decided not to accept the property. I think there's some things that we'd have to talk about with our public works in terms of the maintenance and access, in terms of how that left, the blue and the purple pieces ultimately get configured. And I think just in terms of respect to staff, just, where we're at in this process, I think we did talk about this. Mr. Belanger contacted me earlier, and I think Alderman Scannell, also asked me about this. Early on, and basically said, wait until June, until the Belt plan was finished, so we had kind of a direction for this. And I think trying to, work with Mr. Belanger and move this forward. I understand he has an interest in attaining this property because it's close to other property he owns. With that, this is the first time that I have seen an offer for the property. I apologize, I don't have my records, anything being offered for this property before. But also in terms of development plans, all that has been brought to my attention is a car wash on this site. And I think staff has been repeated in saying that car wash does not go forward with the comprehensive plan. With that, there's a process and you're welcome to make that request and go forward. But just in terms of, I thought there's an opportunity to work on a development project that fits in with the plan to move forward. But that has not been brought forth yet. With that, I think I stick by our staff's recommendation in terms of putting this out there to move forward with that development potential. And if ultimately Mr. Belanger ends up purchasing the property, we'll go through the same things and recommend some development opportunities here. And again, Mr. Belanger is free to go through the process and look at different development proposals on here. In terms of a car wash, I think, sticking by, the staff probably wouldn't recommend that. But ultimately, it's up to this body to decide what the comp plan looks like, how it gets amended, and what the zoning is, and working down that. That's several steps down the road. I think just the first part is, looking at, we have a piece of property that the city no longer needs. Part of it is valuable, so the RDA should sell and market that. The other piece could be treated as what you'd call, traditional surplus property, and it doesn't have a buildable use on it, so it should be turned back into right-of-way or given to the adjacent property owner. I think what's unique about this case is you have potentially a recipient who may not want that property, but then I think if that is the case, then we'd come back and revisit. We'd still have the property, and we'd have to discuss access and easements and maintenance and those types of things if that property does not go into private hands.
Am I right in assuming that if we agreed to this, Mr. Belanger could not, for the time being, accept the purple odd lot? Just leave it and go ahead and bid on the green to purchase it?
That is correct. I believe RDA, would go through and based on, asking, I can't speak for RDA,
Right, I
but if,
understand.
generally if there's
But the
somebody, an
process.
interested party in it, You know, we can either work through a planning option to go through and see, all right, what type of development might be there. We could enter an agreement for a straight sale, or they could put it on the market for a little bit. You know, I'm a believer if there's a buyer there, then we should try and work with the buyer to
Yeah.
acquire that property.
And the purple thing could be attached either to Mr. Belanger's property or to the green border. Right? They are both abutting it. And then you'd have the right-of-way issue would need to be Mr. Belanger's right-of-way if the green property owner were somebody else who took the purple thing.
So if, you're saying if Mr. Belanger acquired the green property.
I'm saying if somebody else acquired the green property, then they could also acquire the purple thing as attaching to the green property as well as it also attaches to Mr. Belanger's property.
I don't believe so, because we already have an existing access agreement with him. So that would cut off access to his existing parcel, so I can't imagine that we would approve something like that.
That's why I'm saying you'd have to have a right-of-way there, just as you have the yellow right-of-way here. for the
Not
green
really the
property.
right-of-way, it would be an access agreement, which we
Okay.
currently
So-
have.
And that goes back to why the property isn't buildable, because there's an access agreement with Mr. Belanger for him to be able to access his property.
Right, so you couldn't build across that.
That is correct.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay.
So just one quick follow-up, I guess. If we approve the proposal as drafted by the staff, would that give Mr. Belanger the opportunity, or give RDA the opportunity to sell this to Mr. Belanger and him the opportunity to either buy it and accept the purple portion, or not buy it and decline the purple portion? Would all of those options remain available?
Yes, so if it's as is, he could deny the purple, go for the green. If he gets the green, go back and try to get the purple again. I mean, if it's surplus property, it's got 3 years to be surplus property before that gets rescinded.
Okay,
helps
that's what
a lot.
I needed to
Thank
know.
you.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question? If it goes to the RDA, does it require an agreement to build the building, or can I just acquire it as raw land?
That would depend on the discretion of the RDA. Generally, the RDA, and I'm speaking mostly for residential lots, when we sell residential lots, have a development agreement, because the reason we want to sell them is because we want property increment on it. So generally, there is a requirement attached for a sale that a certain level investment must be made on the property by a certain amount of time. So generally, we sell residential lots throughout the city. We don't want to sell it just for a neighbor to use it as an extra yard. We want a house on it. So generally, there's a development agreement, and that within a year usually, you have to build a house of X number of square feet or some type of improvements. You have to make some type of improvements onto the property, so that parcel is generating more tax base than just a piece of land.
Okay. I just didn't know the answer to that, so.
One final, one final follow-up question. Is approving the proposal tonight the only way to free this property up for sale under the current policy?
Yes,
Okay.
the city can do nothing with this until it gets declared surplus.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's all I have.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Did anybody else wish to speak on this matter? Alderman Scannell, did you wish to speak?
Tell you the truth, I was trying to figure out where, I came in the middle, I'm not exactly sure which item we're on. Is it the sale of the, we're not, is it the car wash?
No, this is.
Because I heard the car wash mentioned.
This is
I thought it was the
declare
sale of the property.
Surplus property.
Yeah, from what I can tell, it seems like the thing to do is to go forward.
Okay.
When nothing happens, to go forward, so.
And the car wash was approved for that end.
That end.
Oh,
See, yeah,
the
I
curve.
was confused, well, I don't want to take up your time, we can talk later, get caught up, but, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else wish to speak? Okay, hearing none. Chair would entertain a motion to close the floor.
Motion to close floor.
We have a motion and a second to close the floor. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Floor is closed.
Question.
Yes, Commissioner Waspisky.
I guess this thing isn't working here. I thought that was one of the things you just pressed at, and it comes up, so.
That works for everybody but you. No.
I know this thing doesn't like me, but,
There's several of us it doesn't like, don't take it personal, Jerry.
I've got a couple questions. One, I question the location of that whole dang driveway in that roundabout. Is that kosher as far as the municipalities go and as far as highway construction and everything goes?
I believe that was an existing condition, so it was approved because there was already a drive there, but I'm not sure, we'd have to ask DPW on that.
And is that in fact the only access to the piano-shaped piece of green there? Actually, I call it blue-green, yellow?
Yes.
Okay. And you're trying to tell me that that is a buildable lot?
It's definitely a buildable lot.
Without that access, it would not be a buildable lot?
Correct.
Not any longer, no.
Okay.
He has to be able to access the site to put a building on it.
The larger green lot, is that actually owned by Kurt right now? I kind of,
No, it's owned by the city.
That's, the city owns it?
That's why Burley's trying to sell it.
Oh, and so he's trying, okay, so he's trying to sell it. You know, it sounds like you could have a buyer here too. I don't understand why we're sitting here and arguing from a point of, we always like to sell property.
But it's not our thing to sell, it's the RDA.
Oh,
We have to
okay,
declare
so that's gonna have to go back to RDA and he's
Right.
gonna have to buy it from them.
Right.
And then there's been some numbers thrown around for Kurt, basically about how much it would cost, how much it wouldn't cost, and all this and that. After all he's gone through, he said something about 2.5 years, been going through
We
this?
received an application last June.
Okay. And if he basically has been going through all that, I find it hard to believe that he would have the first option of buy it if we get our ducks in a row.
That's what we're trying to do.
Okay. The green access lot that he's interested in probably purchasing on the fuchsia or whatever color you want to call it over there, who's that belong to right now?
The city.
The city. So that whole drive and everything is all city. So consequently, they pile snow there, do everything they want to, and abuse it or whatever they want to do with it.
There is a cross-access agreement, so city can't do anything that prevents Mr. Belanger access to his site. So
Oh,
they
okay.
gotta keep it open to allow him to access his property.
Okay, but I would imagine I'm right also that this actually benefits his business. To keep it open.
The access, you mean? Yeah.
I was just about ready to take it away from everybody and put the whole thing up for sale, but I know Kurt, he's a really good businessman and everything, and man, alive, I would just hope that we can just move this ahead to his satisfaction. I think he's been through enough. And with that, I guess I would just have to say that I guess we have to go through the RDA. This is our only choice. Okay. There was one other thing that was mentioned. You said something about a rental property? Do you own a rental property, or were you thinking about making a large green a rental property?
I own the property next door.
Oh, okay.
That direction,
I
next
own
door.
both sides of it.
Thank you.
Wow, okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the recommendation as it's been submitted to us.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation as submitted. Any further discussion? Commissioner Wisbowski.
Yes, I would like to put a little footnote on there that we would expedite this in the buyer's satisfaction, basically, a little bit quicker than the time that we've been spending on it, as well as tonight. So if we just move ahead with this thing, we have a buyer, he's got the money, you know.
The RDA.
Yeah, well, let's get it rolling, is I guess what I'm saying.
I think the difficulty is the RDA's authority, including to insist upon some kind of investment in buildings. And I'm not sure that Mr. Belanger is interested in building on that property.
Well, I know it's all really nice facts that we try to do everything the same way all the time, but in this case here, wow, this is just super special, folks. You know, I would like to see it move ahead very quickly. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the motion to approve. Would you please all vote now?
I may have to rent a couple of styles.
Okay, motion is approved. Thank you. Next, informational. Director's report.
At the council meeting on May 1st, the Plan Commission report was approved. That was the PUD for St. Mary's Hospital for the campus signage. That also had its first reading. Also had its first reading after a hold was the proposed action on Rothy Street to close that to traffic, the terminus of that. With that, we did not have any other ordinances. That's the report.
Thank you.
Can we receive and place on file, please?
Oh, yes.
Can we get a motion to?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and place on file the director's report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Received and placed on file. The date of the next meeting is May 21st, 2018.
And as a matter of information, I will not be available for that meeting. I'll be out of the country.
So noted.
And with that, there is potential, sorry, you said May 18th?
May 21st.
That may get canceled. It looks like council has they went down to one meeting per month.
Okay.
Right, but we may have some stuff in the queue, so talk and just see if we need to have that meeting. Two reports would go to council, but right now, the next council meeting after this May one would not be until the second or the third Tuesday in June. So depending, if we don't have things in the queue, we'll cancel it, but if we do, it's just good to keep that on track, especially if we sent out notices for hearings and things.
Okay.
Say second or third of June?
It'll be the third week in June, so that would be,
Oh, okay.
so next council meeting is the 15th of May, and after that, the next council meeting would be the 19th of June.
Next is the civil clerk training session.
Okay, this is just an informational item. The training will actually be after the meeting. We currently transcribe the whole meeting, so we're paying for the service of this, and we don't know what will be said during the training or how long it will go, so we'll just do it after the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
And use all, like, I've seen all the videos already.
Okay, thank you. Next item is referral of petitions and communications. I don't believe there are any.
Correct.
So
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
we have a motion and numerous seconds to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Got it figured out.
We got enough questions, I think, tomorrow.